Phosphor Dot friends, Earl at thelogbook.com. We're back on the Apple II for once. We're going to play a little bit of Jawbreaker. This is a game that was released by Online Systems in 1981, perhaps better known now as Sierra Online. And this was a pretty early title for them, designed by John Harris. The Apple implementation was by Olaf Lubeck, as you can see on the screen. And it was one of kind of a glut of early computer games that the designers obviously had seen Pac-Man in action, obviously knew how much money Pac-Man was making, and decided that they were going to try to gobble some of those dots for themselves. And that had kind of mixed results for Sierra Online, or just Online Systems as a result. It was, there was, shall we say, some legal saber rattling. But first, let's concentrate on the game. We're going to play this with joystick. Now, for those of you who have an Apple emulator and don't have a joystick that you can use to play the game, if you're wondering, the keyboard controls are the left and right arrows and the A and Z keys. Not really. I actually tried to play it that way before recording, and that's really not the most intuitive control scheme that that could possibly exist. Now, it's also not a unique control scheme to this game as far as Apple games go. That was used by a lot of Apple arcade-style games, simply because there was no up and down key. So, that being said, as you can see, obviously this is a very close approximation of Pac-Man in the arcade game. Once you select your control scheme, it treats you to a demo mode that shows you, it basically shows you how the game is played. It shows you how much like Pac-Man it is. Whether you are using the joystick or the keyboard, you have to use the space bar to actually start your own game. So, here we go. I'm playing, or at least I'm trying to. The controls are really picky. Missed the prize and kind of wasted my power pellet. The hard candies, such as they are, retreat immediately to their recharge cage and re-emerge. Oh, bad timing. Unlike Pac-Man, if you lose a life while there's a prize on the screen, which I was unable to get, oh, well, said the controls are kind of not as responsive as I would wish they could be. Oh, come on. You have to keep in mind a lot of early Apple games, a lot of the control scheme of the Apple II was predicated on the fact that the machine originally shipped with ports for two paddle controllers for Pong-style games, which you have to figure in 1977 was very much the expectation of what kind of games would be available. Oh, come on. Am I even playing this, or is this demo mode? Okay, my game was over. Okay. Nice of it to let me know. Jawbreaker may have been a pioneer in terms of... It may have been a pioneer in terms of Pac-Man clones. But it I don't know. It's got some things that could be improved. Now, if you're wondering why this Jawbreaker doesn't look like the Jawbreaker you've played on the Atari 2600, that is a story that gets into what happened when Atari, who already held the home rights to Pac-Man thanks to a more or less a first-look deal that it had scored with Namco in the wake of the release of Galaxian in Japan. Okay, we're back in demo mode, so I'll talk here for a little bit without worrying about playing. Atari had rights to, they kind of had first rights to anything Namco came out with. They had the first home computer and console rights because they had worked a deal in 1979 before Pac-Man ever came out. And so there was no bidding war for the rights on Pac-Man. They automatically went to Atari. And as Atari struggled to try to release home computer and console ports of Pac-Man in a reasonable amount of time, you had somewhat more agile outfits like Online Systems or HAL Labs. We've played their game Taxman before, who, unencumbered by the rights, simply had very good programmers working immediately as soon as they saw Pac-Man was making money. Oh, let's make our own Pac-Man for the Apple II. Ken Williams of Online Systems tried to work a deal with Atari where Jawbreaker could come out as it was, because originally it was even more like Pac-Man than what you see here. The whole thing about the chattering teeth and the hard candies came about as a result of Atari threatening to sue. So I believe this is also where some of the changes to the maze come into play. Was that even really a collision? Oh. Yeah, there are some points in the maze where you have kind of areas that are wider than there are wider entrances than the rest of the maze, and it seems like the game is registering a wall there where there is not a wall displayed. So I have a feeling that some of the game's shortcomings arose as a result of having to make those changes to satisfy Atari's legal team and not really having time to playtest those changes because the changes needed to be made ASAP. Pretty sneaky, sis. Yeah, like that. There are a couple of places that I just ran afoul of because the openings are wide, but you can't actually enter them. On a roll. I am not on a roll any longer. My game is, in fact, over. So originally this was a game with, you know, Pac-Man as we know it, and monsters, and, you know, not this whole candy thing. Although, really, I think the candy element is really quite clever. I mean, it makes the game its own distinct entity as much as it can be, given that it's really humping the leg of a particular arcade title really hard. It lends it its own character. It, in fact, gave the game its name, and so it's one of those things where you just kind of have to make a virtue of adversity. I can't make a virtue of my inability to play the game well, though. Yeah, 550 points. I have left the zone, if in fact I was ever in it. So there you go. John Harris's Jawbreaker, translated for the Apple II by Olaf Lubeck. Harris originally programmed Jawbreaker for the Atari home computers, the Atari 400 and 800. And so this was kind of a port to a new computer system of John Harris's port of a particular arcade game. So there you have it, Jawbreaker. Kind of, it's trying very hard to be its own thing, and it does a respectable job of getting there. I just wish it was a little easier to control.